9% of them are EU citizens, and only 41% are third country nationals, so coming from a country outside the EU. Keeping these figures in mind, let us take a look at the reasons for which foreign nationals migrate to Belgium. In 2018, half of the EU citizens migrated to Belgium to carry out a remunerated activity, and more than a quarter of them moves for family reasons. A different picture emerges for third country nationals. 4 out of 10 of these persons obtained a first residence permit for family reasons, and almost 2 out of 10 of them on the basis of international protection. By comparison, only a small number of these persons came to Belgium to study or to work. Lastly, only about 2% has been granted a residence permit for humanitarian reasons. Now, in addition to these foreign nationals born abroad, about 20,000 foreign nationals were born in Belgium and also received a first residence permit. These residence permits were mostly granted for family reasons or for international protection reasons. Now, even within these EU and non-EU categories, the main reasons for migration clearly differ depending on the nationality of the foreign national. Romanian citizens, for instance, mostly come to Belgium for family reasons and economic activities, while French migrants count relatively more students. Now, outside the EU, Moroccans mostly migrate for family reasons, while Syrians almost exclusively obtain residence permits as beneficiaries of international protection or for family reasons. Now, as you can see, very few of these migrants of non-EU nationalities come to Belgium to work or to study. This is particularly clear when we compare the Belgian data to the data of other EU member states. These data are from Eurostat, and they're somewhat different than the previous figures because they also include persons who were born in Belgium and the other member states. But even then, if we compare to other EU member states, we see that this migration for family reasons is much more prominent in Belgium than elsewhere. By contrast, study and work taken together account for a very small share in Belgium, especially in comparison to the Netherlands, France, and the UK. Of course, these are only percentages. In absolute terms, there are enormous differences between the numbers of first residence permits, as you can see here on the right. Now, of all these categories, let me first discuss migration for family reasons. First of all, let's see which family members actually migrate to Belgium from abroad. It turns out that more than half of these persons migrating to Belgium for family reasons were children of persons already residing in Belgium. A bit more than a third of them were partners, and only 4% of them were parents of children already in Belgium. Of all these categories, 44% were EU citizens and 56% were third country nationals. Now, if we take a look at their nationalities, we see that many of the EU family members come from a neighboring country, France and Netherlands in particular. Others mostly come from Eastern Europe, in particular Romania and Bulgaria, and for the first time Romania actually tops this list of nationalities. As for third countries, there's still a large share of foreign nationals from Morocco, even though this number has fallen dramatically since the change in legislation in 2011. Other prominent countries of origin are India, the US, and Turkey, as well as Afghanistan. Syria, by contrast, no longer figures in this list of top nationalities. So now that we know who is coming to Belgium, let us take a look at the persons already residing in Belgium, so the sponsors of family reunification. Half of them are EU citizens, another 18% are Belgian citizens, and only a third of these sponsors are third country nationals. If we dig further and take a look at the residence status of these sponsors, we see that only 2,700 persons, or only about 8% of these persons have been granted actually, it's only in about 2,700 cases of family reunification that the sponsor has been granted an international protection status. So the sponsor is then either a refugee or a beneficiary of subsidiary protection. And this is a remarkably small group compared not only to the overall numbers of family reunification, but also compared to the numbers of persons obtaining a first residence permit as a beneficiary of international protection. So as we see here, international protection does not seem to have this multiplier effect through family reunification. Let us now turn to economic migration. In Belgium, unlike the general migration policy, economic migration is a competence of the regions since the Sixth State Reform of 2014. On the left of this slide, we see that there has been very little evolution in the number of foreign nationals obtaining a first residence permit to work in Belgium. These are mainly EU citizens who make use of their free movement rights within the EU. And to a much smaller extent, these include third country nationals in yellow. Since January, these third country nationals need to apply for a single permit for work and stay at the level of the regions. And this single permit procedure will be discussed later this afternoon. Now, it's important to note that this classic economic migration is not the only form of international labor mobility in Belgium. Over the last 10 years, there has been a spectacular increase in the number of posted workers in Belgium from about 100,000 in 2010 to over 230,000 persons in 2018. These are all employees in another EU member state who are sent to Belgium to perform a temporary service, but who remain subject to social security in the sending state. Now, about half of these posted workers are nationals of the EU 15, so of the old member states. The other half comes either from one of the newer member states or increasingly from a third country. In 2018, 28,000 posted workers in Belgium were third country nationals sent from another EU member state. And by comparison, only about 6,000 third country nationals obtained a first residence permit as economic migrant. Then a quick word on regularization. Regularization in Belgium is a so-called authorization to stay that can be granted in exceptional circumstances or because of medical reasons. These are based on the famous Articles 9 bis and 9 ter of the Immigration Act. Now, since 2016, there has been a gradual increase in the number of positive decisions. These decisions often apply to more than one person, as you can see on this slide. In 2019, so up until October, almost 1 out of 5 of these persons had the Armenian nationality. So this is almost a 10-fold increase since 2016. For Kosovo, Serbia, and Morocco, the numbers are also on the rise, while for Russia and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there is a downward trend. To conclude this first part, let us move away from the residence permits and take a look at the latest figures on nationality. In 2018, about 36,000 foreign nationals have obtained the Belgian nationality. As you can see, these numbers have been fluctuating over the years, but they do not increase or decrease overall. In recent years, more than half of these persons have acquired the Belgian nationality. This is done through a declaration. A smaller category of foreign nationals has been granted the nationality. This is an almost automatic procedure, especially used for minors. In comparison, very few persons have obtained the nationality through naturalization, a procedure that today has become exceptional. So where do these new Belgians come from? As you can see on the right, this picture is quite mixed, but almost a third of them comes from Europe. So these are both EU and non-EU states. Over a quarter comes from North and Sub-Saharan Africa in yellow, and finally another major group comes from West Asia in green here. So I believe we have seen enough figures. So let us then move on to the EMN outputs in 2019 and to the ad hoc queries to start with. So as Bram already explained, an ad hoc query is a series of questions on a specific topic. This can be a specific migration procedure or figures or policies. Since the start of this year, more than 100 queries have been launched within EMN. and a number of these related to legal migration. To give you some examples of these queries, our Dutch colleagues sent a query on the use of national D visas, or these are long-term national visas. Our Austrian colleagues asked more information about the statuses of family members of beneficiaries of international protection. There's been a query on long-term residence schemes for children who are in irregular stay in the territory. Our Spanish colleagues asked about labor market tests and in particular about shortage occupation lists in the member states. Our Czech colleagues launched a query on tuition fees for doctoral programs. Early language support was a topic of a query sent by our British colleagues. And finally, the French contact point sent a query on access conditions to social benefits, such as healthcare or social housing. Now, in addition to these ad hoc queries, each year EMN publishes 4 thematic studies, some of which concern legal migration. In September of this year, EMN published the EU Synthesis Report on Attracting and Retaining International Students. This report describes the flows of third country nationals moving to the EU to study, and it explores the national policies and practices in this field, and it examines the incentives in place to encourage foreign nationals to come to study in the EU. Attention is also paid to measures to retain these international students after graduation, for instance, by facilitating their access to the labor market. Now, 3 other studies are upcoming. In the next weeks, EMN will publish its study on migratory pathways for startups and innovative entrepreneurs in the EU. The study at the national level is conducted by law firm Fragomen. In early 2020, EMN will publish a comparative overview of national protection statuses that exist next to the international protection statuses. So in Belgium, this will be humanitarian regularization, medical regularization, as well as the authorization to stay as a durable solution for unaccompanied minors. Lastly, EMN is currently working on a study on pathways to citizenship at the EU and the national level. In Belgium, this study is conducted by Professor Wautelet, who will discuss the Belgian legislation on nationality later this afternoon. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.